really want to know.
I was doing that last minute sip on the beverage before we got started here, but hello.
Happens. Well, hello. Good morning.
Good morning.
And welcome to the latest episode of the Project Failure Files, the series for anyone who manages people, projects, or processes for a living. I am Sharon Weaver, CEO of Smarter Consulting.
And I am Christian Buckley, founder of Collab Talk, and welcome to another episode where Sharon and I explore leadership and management topics, situations, from the perspective of what not to do.
And this is the fourth of 5 episodes where we are talking about the impact of AI technology within the enterprise, how it's altering how we lead and manage people. And today we're going to talk about a trap that many organizations are walking straight into, which is expecting immediate productivity gains from AI. The hype cycle makes it sound instant, but the reality is far more complicated.
This is something Sharon and I think it was actually this topic here, number 4 of the 5, which kind of led us towards doing this mini series in the first place, is within Project Failure Files, because we've worked on a number of projects together. We've done some deployments and done trainings, and this is a very common error that's made. This thing that and we've seen it through other cycles, again, coming as SharePoint people. It's like, I'm just going to upgrade to the latest version of SharePoint and that'll solve everything. It's like, no, it won't. Throwing AI at something, it doesn't just auto-magically solve problems. So this isn't a problem that originates with AI. That's my point here. So there's I love the I've experienced this as well. Like the CEO who sat in an airplane and read the in-flight magazine on something and then was so enthusiastic about that thing. And where we doing a research to understand what is he talking about? What does he want? And we put 2 and 2 together with the Delta in-flight magazine that we found the article online.
Yep.
And did he fly Delta? Yes, he did. Boom. That's where it happened. But this idea that that you're going to deploy new technology and we're going to make all these investments and all these new licenses, and then suddenly we're going to have this measurable, magical savings, productivity is just going to jump out at us and be realized immediately. And what they're realizing is that it takes much more of an investment, and it takes behavioral change to make it stick. I know. It takes time, Sharon, is what I'm trying to say.
Well, I mean, it's just like everything else out there, right? This will solve your problem. Take this pill, buy this book, buy this apparatus, buy this license, right? Whatever it is, buy it and it'll fix all your problems. But the truth of the matter is, like you said, there's behavioral change that has to happen. And often when you get something like that, you notice kind of like a dip before it actually gets better, because the change, right? The act of changing actually impacts what you're doing. There's also this big learning curve. So people have to even learn what this new thing is and how to use it. They have to try it out. They have to experiment. They have to make mistakes. They have to fail with it to some degree. They have to rethink all of their processes, everything that they're doing day to day. What are we doing? Are we doing it right? How are we doing it? And so a lot of times I think what ends up happening is you give people this new thing and you expect, I gave it to you, everything should change immediately. And honestly, just that kind of stopping and, reorganizing everything actually is part of the process that gets you to where you want to be.
Would you say that it was, sorry, we're kind of digging into the meat already here in the intro, but I mean, would you, I'm sure we'll come back to this, but would you say that it's expected to see a productivity dip?
Yeah.
Is it outrageous to think that and think about this with any new technology? Maybe this is just more of a rhetorical question for the audience too, but if you're, I think just to rephrase part of what you just said, if you're adding something new that is going to improve, without working people double hours, people have to go figure it out. They have to retool, rebuild, position, all those things. So to expect to maintain or continue to grow productivity, I'll do it this way. While this new thing is coming in, is unrealistic. And so that's I think that where leaders grab whatever numbers look impressive, they just want to see, hey, we're doing something more. But the problem is, it's like with pilots. So many pilots fail before they even start because they're not built the right way on the right things. They're not built to really drive a measurable outcome of this is what we would benefit from with this new thing. And so I think it's similar problems here. If you don't have a clear understanding of this is what it actually takes to go and do this effort, what are we looking at? How do we measure that? How is that going to impact what our current productivity is? It skews your thinking of what was successful or not. And that's why I think a lot of organizations that are complaining that they're not seeing productivity improvements is because what they're seeing is the beginning of the dip while the retooling is going on. They've not given it time to catch back up and then improve.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. And I think this comes back to setting expectations, right? It's expectations about what is actually going to happen. And like you just said, like they got to have time and they got to have bandwidth to do that. And frankly, most people are not able, let alone should be expected to double their workload for something new. And so oftentimes the expectation really needs to be some of these people are not going to do their day-to-day jobs while we're in the middle of this change. And some of these people are going to have less productivity than we're used to because they're changing with the idea that ultimately, it's going to be a swing in the right direction. But what ends up happening instead, I think, like you said, is that they try to kind of make up, well, how can we show immediate growth so that we can get the value out of the thing we're paying for? And it makes them feel better in the moment, but it doesn't actually show the reality. And we all, ultimately leadership oftentimes is pushed into show me that it's working instead of show me what's actually happening and let's prepare properly for it.
Yeah. I know we're going to get into it. There's other aspects to this as well. I mean, because it's not just about the licenses that you apply, throwing technology at something, but are our people ready to take advantage of that? Even if you did successfully pilot the new technology, and to show that I think over time that this would improve our productivity, our output, whatever the things that you're measuring there for the pilot is. It doesn't mean that then the rest of the organization will be ready to go. You need training, enablement, coaching. You need to prepare for that dip in each of those areas where people are going to be onboarded while they figure out how to turn the tools into real impact for the organization.
Right. And leadership really needs to learn how to properly report what is happening and properly set expectations so that, the people that they're being responsible to understand what realistic expectations are, because otherwise they're going to sell a miracle. It's not going to happen. And ultimately they're going to be like, well, that didn't work. Let's get rid of it.
Yeah. As always, this should be a great conversation. There's lots to dig into as we share some of our other ideas and experiences. But please provide your feedback throughout. We always welcome. We love the comments when we receive them, and love to respond back to you out in the various digital formats out there. So don't be a stranger to sharing your thoughts on this topic.
Well, let's get started with some definitions.
So thinking about, again, the expectations around this assumption that, we'll have these instant results back, or even with the completion of a pilot. I mean, the pilot should generally prove out like the capabilities may not necessarily, like you might have to do a second or a third pilot to then prove the productivity gains out of that. It's like interviewing somebody for a job. You can't just have one 45-minute discussion and be like, okay, that person, I've nailed their personality, their capability. It's like, no, you need some different perspectives.
I don't know. I know some HR people who might disagree with you, but
well, there is the high level personality, or the what do they call it? I guess the cultural fit.
Right.
conversation. There is that.
Yeah.
But I'm saying, but you don't understand the capability of, especially if hiring on a technical role through one 45-minute discussion. That's my point.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I mean, I think, again, like we kind of talked about in the intro, when we talk about productivity gains, I think, this is always, I think we've had episodes on reporting, and we've talked about, what does metrics even mean, right? When we talk about data and we talk about the definition of productivity gains, I mean, everybody kind of has a different assumption of what that means. And I think ultimately a lot of people are either not using metrics, or they're finding metrics that show things in their favor as opposed to understanding. What? I know, right? Crazy idea.
That's it. Hey, that's just it's a truth. It's a Buckleyism. It's another one. For those that are keeping score, every once in a while I throw them out there, just phrases that I've said again and again and again. But once people understand how they're being measured, they will change their behavior and optimize around that metric. Mm-hmm. Boom. I mean, yep. Yes, we all know that.
That's exactly it. And so ultimately, I think part of it is understanding what you mean by productivity gains. And first and foremost, I'm going to be really honest, and we're going to talk about this, but like most people don't even know what AI is or how to get anything out of it, let alone how to create metrics around productivity gains by implementing it.
They didn't understand what IA was. They're not going to understand what AI is. So, yeah. I think people have also confused purchasing power with transformative power. So buying an AI license, that's a transaction. Changing how people work, that's a transformation. So those two things don't generally happen at the same time. They're not on the same timeline, and pretending that they do sets everybody up for failure. And I think that's where I say most organizations, they fail at running pilots because they don't know what to measure. They're measuring the wrong things. They're looking at it, or they're reading what they see the wrong way.
Well, it's kind of like, when we get into our New Year's resolution and everybody clamors to buy their gym membership because it's on sale, and clearly buying a gym membership will make you healthier, more muscular, lose weight. It's going to do all those things immediately for you without ever having to do anything at all.
Duh. Yeah. Clearly. Yeah.
We don't need any more goals than that. Like we bought the membership. It was on sale. Done deal.
Yeah, there's a concept that economists call the productivity J curve, that performance dips before it climbs. I think it was an MIT Sloan, so the business school there, that the researchers that they actually did a study there. They confirmed that pattern with AI adoption, and they were looking specifically at the manufacturing sector. I've got some experience there, and what I liked about and using that as an example is there's a lot of very process-oriented, transactional process type things where AI is a good fit to go in there and optimize and improve there. But their data shows what we've been talking about, that productivity actually drops below, eventually outperforming peers who never adopted AI at all. In that the dip, this is the danger, is treating, this is again, goes back to the looking for that instant win. Like we hit it out of the ballpark, right away. The dip isn't failure. It's just the price of learning to improve.
Yeah. So I mean, I think ultimately when that happens, you bring this new thing in, we're spending a bunch of money. So there's no anxiety around this already, right? Because it's like a super cheap license to begin with.
Yeah.
So, they spend all this money on it. They're super scared. They're already anxious. And now productivity dips. Right. And I think ultimately that creates this fear of letting anybody do anything because they're like, well, it's already expensive. It makes people not work. So why would we even do it? And so now all of a sudden, no, we're just out. Like, let's go back to the way we knew how to do it. It's, at least we knew what we were in for there. So I do think it does impact teams that way.
Oh, of course. I think it's a dangerous assumption where it's that, you think of this again, not just AI, any technology, if it doesn't work immediately, I always go back and look at, is it because did we prove out the functionality? Did it do what it said it could do? And then there's applying it to the business case and the output and measuring it that way. And I think that most organizations, again, this is my experience, Sharon, I know, we're looking at a bunch of the same, clients with these deployments. It's that they're impatient organizations. They pulled the plug on something that just needed time to breathe. I always use other examples that are out there, and I know you're going to laugh at this, but you look at like the Microsoft Zune and or even Windows Phone.
Your favorite.
Oh yeah, of course. Do I still have it behind me? It's somewhere. It's on the shelf somewhere. And no, I pulled it off the shelf. It was in my bag getting ready to travel. That's right.
So for our viewers that have a bingo card for Zune, there you go. You got it.
I will have my Zune with me in Orlando, Sharon. So FYI. No, but it's that it was for those that are familiar with, the whole iTunes and the iPod experience and Zune. And Zune was that this problem was that it was too late, but it was a far superior software experience. It sped up, it got better at the hardware. It had beautiful hardware, but it was much too late. But there's other things like Windows Phone where it just, because it wasn't an instant success, even though I believe it was a superior interface. A lot of us that miss the iPhone interface, it just didn't. There are a lot of reasons why it failed. That Microsoft made other mistakes, but I believe their main mistake was that they just didn't give it enough time to breathe.
Yeah.
To grow.
Yeah, I can see that. And I mean, I think in general, you get this temptation, right? You get this temptation at a leadership level to say, did it work or did it not work? Did it work or did it not work? And it's like, well, but based on what, right? Based on what timeline, based on what metrics, and often from a financial perspective, especially, when you are trying to manage to a certain amount, like these licenses, again, they're not the cheapest licenses, right? I think you do kind of get this temptation to say it's either going to work or it's not going to work, and we're just going to be out. And they don't see that kind of long-term strategy of slow and steady wins the race. They just see works or doesn't work.
Maybe I'm thinking about it this way, Sharon's a little bit different, because I get that leadership. You're taking limited information. You're having to make decisions. Hey, is this going to be the right decision or not? And hey, your leadership, your success long-term really leans on whether or not your guesstimates, your professional experience, you made the right calls on things. And there's plenty of good leaders that made bad decisions based on limited data, and they paid for it later. But a lot of this, it makes me think of like the R&D team. There's a reason that there's separation.
Yes.
Let R&D go and research and develop and explore and things. And ultimately, those technologies, I used to love, when I worked for Microsoft, I loved attending the internal R&D team lectures, and they just explore and share what they were working on and get feedback from employees. And it was fantastic. Go take a look at that. And plus the other guest speakers came in, like Malcolm Gladwell twice came in for the R&D and spoke there. It was fantastic. But the mistake is if you're treating these deployments, which are more R&D efforts, into something that, your innovation's now a performance review. Nobody is going to experiment freely when they're being graded on speed.
Yeah, it's true.
And so it's a lot of those, it's that short-term thinking on what should be a long-term process.
Yeah, I just think from our project failure perspective, right? When we think about project failure, like what is it that you're doing wrong, right? What not to do. I think when we think about new technology, and AI is just the latest kid on the block, right? But we think about new technology, we think about opportunities, we think about, changes that can make things better, faster, more efficient, more productive. I think it's really just holistically thinking about what are we doing? how are we gauging whether it's working or not? And I absolutely think you're right. This is something that's happened in the tech world for a long time, is there's always been a separate R&D team, like you mentioned, to go out and try the new stuff and be like, yes, it's worth it, or no, it's not. Because otherwise what happens is you are literally giving up and suffering day-to-day productivity to try to see if something's going to work. And if you don't have a plan for who's going to do that and when they're going to do that and how they're going to do that and how we're going to decide whether or not it goes on to the rest of the people, then you're already struggling. And I think, there's a bigger problem that we're seeing here, is that there's a lot of organizations that didn't have something like that in place, and they just see this kind of quick win. And so they want to jump on board and say, well, we don't have a plan for that, but we see this new thing and we see everybody else is using it and everybody's telling us we have to use it. So we're just going to take it and suffer and, decide if it's going to work for us or not. And I think that's, what not to do is don't have a plan for how you deal with new innovative stuff.
Yeah.
Just get it.
Well, I think of some of the, we've talked to some of them, like going down a list of some of the pitfalls of this approach. And again, treating, what should be an innovation approach as a scorecard and moving too quickly, is that you have, like we talked about, learning curves are misinterpreted as failure. Teams hide the fact that they're experimenting with something. They only want to share it if it's successful. They'll do it in the background, or employees will go and do things on their own time because if they think, hey, this could be a difference for us. And so what you tend to get then are a lot of superficial metrics in your reporting. You've got these short-term dashboards that are driving a lot of those long-term decisions, which is you're never going to take leaps and bounds and lead in your category if you are dealing in short-term thinking. And so a lot of these initiatives, and I think we're seeing this, push back on AI initiatives. They lose a lot of that executive support. They lose trust. And then credibility begins to suffer because of that. And so when the early numbers don't match the pitch deck, organizations rarely say, hey, we need more time. Instead, they say this didn't work. And that premature verdict can set adoption back years. And so I think we're starting to see that with the AI adoption cycle, where some organizations are pushing back on that altogether. And so organizations that are innovation focused and they understand that it takes time, things need to simmer for a while, they understand it. But the organizations that understand that are going to be leaps and bounds ahead of their competition.
Yeah, I agree. And so, we start thinking about the real world, and it's really interesting because I work all day, every day with people who are trying to transition into AI. They're trying to, deploy some of these AI innovations. And it's really funny because I think you and I sat on a panel like maybe a year ago or maybe even longer, where everybody's like, well, what should everybody be doing right now? And our answer was, well, if you were doing all the things you're supposed to be doing, you should just be able to say, oh, let's try AI and see what happens, right? But a lot of people were not. And so what's interesting to me is you're absolutely right. The organizations that I see that have governance, they have metadata management, they have content types, they have, clear processes, they have all of these things that, they've kind of kept up, maybe not 100%, they've kind of kept up with what's going on. Many of them, they just need some training. They just need to understand what it is. They just need to understand, how can I incorporate this into my existing process flow? And they do fantastic. And then I see other organizations that haven't done any of that stuff. And so now they're turning on AI and they're like, oh, well, once I turned on AI, I'm going to have to go back and do all this stuff because now it's going to expose things that we didn't think about from a permission standpoint. It's going to do things that we have no idea how to manage. It's going to connect with things that we've never set up, right? So it exposes all these gaps and all these things that didn't get done. And I'm seeing this like story after story after story after story, which it's just wild to me.
Yeah, I was doing some research on this, came up with a couple stats that are interesting. Because it's interesting to look at the various reports, and Microsoft has studies that are out there. If you go and you follow, is he CVP now or Jared Spataro? Oh no, he's the what is it? The CMO of AI in the workplace. I think that's its official title.
I believe you.
Yeah. Anyway, some great data that's out there. This one's an organization I wasn't familiar with, METR, like meter, or I don't know. But they had a randomized controlled trial, found that experienced developers using AI tools were actually 19% slower, yet they believe they were 20% faster. And that's a 39-point gap between perception and reality. So imagine making investment decision based on that kind of confidence. And so it's funny. We always joke about one of the problems of AI is people get led astray by, I don't think hallucinations happen as often as people talk about them, but there's, high levels, highly confident AI responses to average, information. But there's another one. The National Bureau of Economic Research quantified AI's current average productivity gain across companies at about 2.8%. So that's roughly 13 minutes in an 8-hour day.
Yes.
So that's real, but it's not the revolution that got funded in the boardroom. So if you promised a revolution, 13 minutes feels more like a betrayal.
But again, to your point, like we're in the early swing of things. And
right.
I think, when you hear people talking about on social media, you won't get behind if you keep up with AI, or the people who are going to get left behind are the companies that are not using AI. I think there's, like you said, we're at this 13-minute mark, but those that are continuing to go down that path are going to experience the productivity and the savings and all of that over the years. And those that are like, I didn't see any immediate, stuff, so I'm not going to do it at all, later on down the road are going to have a bigger gap to catch up on, I think.
Well, thinking about strategies for this, and I think that's a great segue for this. I think organizations need to normalize the dip. Boom. Tell your teams and your executives up front, productivity will likely slow before it accelerates. That's number one. And that's not a failure signal. It's a growth signal. It means that you're taking more time. You're assessing existing processes while you're getting other, today's business done and the work through as well. But the organizations that ride through it are the ones that come out ahead, to your point.
Setting realistic expectations, crazy idea.
I know. Replacing vanity dashboards with one honest question, like, are decisions getting better? Not faster, not cheaper, but better. And so it's a lot of the improvements that you might see. Again, it's not a ballpark. It's not a bottom line affected, but those qualitative improvements are where it starts. And then you put that into measurable quantitative measurements that do impact the business. So it's going to, even that 13 minutes a day initial improvement to productivity, people are still scraping the surface of what the capability is. They don't fully understand the technology yet. So that's going to speed up. It's going to improve.
Well, and I think to that point, your point of they don't even understand training, right? And this, honestly, I'm really excited to see that so many organizations are really starting to reach out and they're wanting more training. Now, the fun part is they think that they want to be trained on AI, but many of them can't get there yet because they still have to go back and catch up on some of the other apps before they can get to AI. But that's a different conversation. But I do think that organizations that ultimately want to take advantage of what's happening in AI should really focus on training first and foremost. Do you know what you have? Do you understand what you're doing with it? Do you know how to use the tools you already have? How do you get the most out of those? Because if you're not, like, you need training on that to begin with. And then from an AI perspective, you're going to need training on AI as well.
Yep. Yeah, there's a report out by Bright Horizons. When employers provide structured AI training, adoption jumps to 76%. Now we can get into adoption versus engagement and what that actually means and all those kinds of things, but that's compared to 25% adoption without it. That's not a marginal difference. That's the difference between a tool people use and a tool people ignore. So having that structured approach, being consistent, staying on top of it, that makes a big difference. And so, and there are plenty of companies that do this. They treat these skills as core to the strategy. There are organizations that have said, we are going to make, like, we don't fully understand it yet, but we're going to make AI central to our strategy. We are committed to this and move forward. That is a much stronger message than, hey, we tried these things and we didn't really understand it, but where it fits, but we're not so sure. It's like attaching back in the day .com to your name and suddenly that gave you a cloud strategy somehow. It's like, no, it doesn't. So just saying that, oh yeah, and we're going to use AI. Great. What does it actually mean? So yeah, you have to make it much more meaningful to the purpose of what you're trying to accomplish, and the executive pressure should be that it's a qualitative improvements alongside the quantitative improvements. Communicate their risks, their understanding of it, giving time for things to breathe and for things to work themselves out, not being caught up in those instant metrics.
Yeah. Well, and I think if executives have realistic expectations, then the other thing that happens is that rollout, that change management, that adoption, that engagement, like you said, give them the tool, expect them to use it, train them on how to use it, and then have realistic expectations of what's going to come out of that overnight, they're not going to immediately, double and triple their productivity and their work gains. What they will do is start to use the tool, right? That's what we're looking for. Are they using the tool? Do they know what it is? Do they know how to use it? And are they starting to incorporate that into their daily lives? If you start paying attention to more realistic expectations, then that executive pressure tends to, it tends to calm down just a little bit.
So Sharon, to close things out, what would you say are your best practices? Any specific call to action that you would give people?
It definitely, make sure that you have a realistic expectation for a realistic amount of time. So maybe like a 90-day expectation. Here's what we're going to actually try to do in the next 90 days. Put real worlds around that, real words around that, quantitative, right? What are the things we actually are looking for out of this? And put that together with an actual change management plan so that you can say, we're going to do these things. We're going to train these users. We're going to give them these scenarios. We're going to have them use AI. And then we're going to see if we train them on how to use it and give them the right tools and tell them the scenario, does that actually bring us back value that we can see and touch and understand?
There's a bunch of different approaches that are out there. I mean, I like this idea of having this like a 90-day plan. It may be like a crawl, walk, run type of approach to it. And maybe it's not 90 days, maybe it's 9 months with 3 months per phase. But you've got, the first 30 days of a 90-day plan might be just sheer confusion. People are learning. There's kind of what it is, classes and things that are part of that. And then the next 30 days are specifically experimentation. A lot of organizations that are doing like internal hackathon type models and what can you do? Get people creative thinking about how this applies. And then the last 30 days is where you start as an organization, start looking at what are people building? What are they doing? Where are they finding success? What are those patterns that we're starting to see there? And then start building a strategy around those patterns. And so that is, again, it's a more structured approach to it rather than just, hey, we're going to take some training, we're going to pay some licensing, and hopefully it'll work out, which is that Hail Mary type approach to every new technology deployment.
Yep. I agree.
Well, it's I know there's a lot around this. Again, this was the topic that actually started it all for us for the mini series. But we'll be back next week to close it out with episode 5 in the mini series. But you'll catch us every Monday morning for Project Failure Files, always at 9 a.m. Pacific, because we're not doing anything else at 9 a.m. Pacific
On a Monday morning.
Well, I guess actually we are, because neither of us are on the West Coast, so we're already up doing things technically. But yeah. But we like nowhere else than to be here with you during this hour. So, but thanks for watching, everybody.
See you next time.
Bye.